Hello. Today I'd like to talk about introverted sensation. Introverted sensation doesn't get the attention it deserves in the Jungian community, probably because Jungian typology is generally dominated by intuitive types who frequently regard it as boring, along with many other concrete and meaningful matters in the world. Now, introverted sensation is very important within the psychic economy by virtue of its attentiveness to detail, its conscientiousness, and its ability to proceed forward without getting distracted by unnecessary details. This is a point that will frequently cross up NE types for whom those details are considered vital and potentially highly viable paths to follow. However, particularly in the world of business, it's very important to have a group of people who is dedicated to following out what is known to work, because if we're chasing down every possible road that comes our way, it's very unlikely any progress is going to be made by virtue of changing gears so often. This isn't quite the same for NI types, because NI types are not as inclined to chase after potentialities in terms of completing practical tasks as NE types, probably because NE tends to concern itself, as Jung said, with an expectant attitude towards the object, and subsequently leads to a rather visceral sense that an opportunity is being missed, whereas an NI type is more inclined to regard a perspective as being some vital piece of data that's going to be missed, and subsequently seeing as perspective is separated from action in a way that potential options of moving forward aren't, it's more likely that an NI type is going to have a certain separation between his eagerness for a perception and his eagerness to carry out that perception. Whereas the NE type, by virtue, of course, of the definition of NE being attached to the object, is going to be inclined to regard the potential as existing inherently in the object, and subsequently is inclined to see it as not only a viable option, but in some ways a mandate, a juicy opportunity that's going to be allowed to get away if we don't jump on it now. To come back to SI, the importance of this screening can be seen particularly in the field of medicine, where you certainly can't have people chasing to and fro up and down the highways of potentiality when you have them under the knife. It's very important to stick only to tried and true methods of operation, otherwise you're going to severely risk hurting or killing people. It's true that SI can be overly conservative, but it's also true that functions such as NE can be overly unconservative and can go rambling off into the briars and brush and not pay enough heed towards what's gone before. Now, this is all well and good in theory, and there is no NE type on Earth that would not... there isn't an NE type on Earth that wouldn't accept the proposition that SI has value within certain spheres. That's a very easy kind of a thing to accept, typically because the one doing the accepting is not in that field, and therefore can safely feel unthreatened by that particular activity. However, the difficulty arises when a type has to function with another type of what you might call a conflicting function set, and work with that person, if not harmoniously, at least productively. And that can be one of the main difficulties between NE and SI, where unless they can fall into a particular groove, they can easily come to see each other in a highly negative light. And, both sides probably have their point up to a point. But the fact is that it's much more difficult to work with somebody who has a fundamentally different set of functions by virtue of the fact that tends to threaten the underpinning for our individual world. And that leads to a great deal of acrimony and accusations and just general ill will. Now, it's important to recognize additionally that SI has philosophic value and not just simply practical value. By virtue of this attentiveness to the internal impressions formed by the stuff of objects, a very unique individual comes about who has a highly textured and, again, conscientious view of the world, which is something you don't tend to get particularly with intuitives, by virtue of the fact that intuitives tend to, obviously by definition, look past the thing observed, either within or without himself, and try to look for either, generally speaking, try to look for either more options and more possibilities like NE, or greater insight or deeper meaning like NI. And this brushing past the object itself can lead to a very great segment of human experience being missed, which the intuitive not infrequently doesn't miss because they frequently don't tend to value it. But it is a very valuable part of human nature and a very valuable part of man's experience. And so it's important to recognize that SI also has great philosophical contributions to give. I believe that's enough for now, and I'll see you in the next video.